9 and KFAN and Vikings.com to televise their first padded practice. Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Rich along with Don Mitchell. And Don, this is very unique. The Vikings did this once before under Mike Zimmer. Then the pandemic hit and everything was shut down. But it's great to see that the Vikings are willing to open this up to give the fans a chance that can't make it out here to Eagan to watch the team so they can sit at their office, sit at home, check out the squad in their first padded practice.
Yeah, and this new regime, too, is loving the fact that it happens today on the first padded practice because this is now the end of what they call the ramp-up period. And this is where the competitions really start to go. Although Ed Donatel, the defensive coordinator, said today, you know what, even though it's the first day, we're going to let the veterans take the lead, Jim. We don't want the rookies to go hog wild.
No.
We also told the coaches, let's dial it back if they get a little too extreme. We want some pop, but not the big pops, right? So they're going to ease into it. And on Saturday, I know Kevin O'Connell said he was really looking forward to this day because he knows one thing. This is nice and camp is great, but the regular season is going to start and be here before you know it.
We really wanted to get through the ramp-up period and get the pads on and see where we're at, what type of matchups and combinations do we want to put together. Really in all three phases, there's a lot of jobs and a lot of spots on our roster that are very, very competitive for good reasons. We got some good football players that want to be a part of what we're doing. So I want to make sure we allow guys to do that, allow guys to feel comfortable in new systems while also making sure, we got a mindset of having our best 53 guys available for the Green Bay Packers.
Now, the biggest deal, obviously, about putting the pads on is that's what they wear on Sundays. And this is where now the coaching staff can figure out who really can play. As every coach in football has always said, everybody looks great in a helmet and shorts. But when you put on the pads, you throw in the physical element of the game, it changes. And the Vikings have a lot of key decisions to do along the offensive line. We know how porous it was a year ago. And the big spot is right guard.
And that is one of the questions we've had for many years here, right? Well, now we've got three distinct players who are going to be fighting it out, and they have been from the neck up, as Coach has been saying, but right now when they put the pads on, this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So it's going to be Jesse Davis, Chris Reed, or the new guy coming in, draft pick, Ed Ingram. So right now, all things point to, of course, Jesse Davis, because Jesse Davis, he's played this position before, even though when he first came in, Jim, they moved him from tackle position that he was at his last team.
Right.
But let me tell you, he's played right guard before, and if you look at his stats, in 2018, he had the amazing pass blocking stats, and so they're looking at him for that. But Chris Reed, this is going to be a big battle between the veterans. But you don't draft a guy like Ed Ingram and have him sit on the bench.
No,
but, you got to ease him in. So everyone's saying, how is that three going to boil down? But right now, I think it's Davis going in.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Let's just hope they find somebody capable of playing the position. As years past, they've had a difficult time. Now, on the other side of the ball, defensively, we've heard so much about Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and how those guys are going to rip people up. Well, the Vikings, they got to stop their opponents, and they had a difficult time with that last year, especially in the final 2 minutes of a half and of the game. That's where the Vikings really got burnt deep. But there's some changes there this season.
Everyone's saying, okay, who's going to be the number two with Patrick Peterson? So P2 is back. Who's going to be the guy in corner with them? Well, there's some younger guys that want to edge out Pat P. So the competition is there. Cam Bynum right now, Cam Dantzler.
Sure.
Cam Bynum is a safety. Cam Dantzler right now wanting to be that guy. He is the guy. But let me tell you, you don't also get an Andrew Booth Jr. He's the one that picked up Kirk Cousins that was going for Justin Jefferson earlier in camp. So Booth has had a great camp so far, so those two are going to be battling it out to see who's number two so far there.
All right, it'll be fun. Now we're turning it over to the Vikings Entertainment Network. Paul Allen and Pete Bursich join us now.
Hey, welcome to Minnesota Vikings training camp at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Pete Bursich, analyst for Vikings football on KFAN and the Vikings Radio Network. And I'm your play-by-play announcer, Paul Allen. We are also going to be joined shortly by Tatum Everett from the Vikings Entertainment Network, the VEN. She's going to be chatting with Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell. That is coming up very soon. And Gabe Henderson, also from the VEN, he'll have general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah during the course of this hour at Vikings.com, Fox 9, and also FM 100.3 KFAN. Now, Pete, as we begin this Monday, this is a very important day for Vikings training camp. And if you've been listening to the noon to 3 presentation on the flagship KFAN, we've talked a lot about it. It's the first day of padded practices, which means these kids have had a day off. So now you got pent-up aggression. It's hot. You got guys trying to win jobs. Now they can hit with pads on. You did it when you were a linebacker for the Vikings. What's a day like this like?
Well, it's first of all, you're going to have the headache no matter what happens, and you got what we used to call it knocking the cobwebs out. You'd have a couple days before you could actually hit like you're going to today, and then not have a headache for all night long. But it's important for these guys to be competitive and not combative, and it's going to be important for some of these guys that are veterans, guys that need to learn, or new guys that need to learn techniques, to get out there and do what they can do. And it's a different game with the pads on, different practice with the pads on. The intensity is going to be sky high. I love it. It's going to be fun.
Kevin O'Connell is the new head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, and he is with Miss Tatum Everett with the VEN. What's going on, Tatum?
Hey, PA. Pete, thanks for the toss down here. We are in a very warm training camp. It's the first day of pads. This is what the off-season, the OTAs, minicamp, it's all led to. So how does putting on the pads change the evaluation of each individual player?
Yeah, it's a great question, because we've kind of phased this from day one, when we first arrived here as a coaching staff. You build the learning and the teaching phase through the spring, and our guys just absolutely dominated that. Within the confines of the rules, but also the way we set things to try to make sure that teaching and learning was at a premium, and then they could leave here for the spring going into the summer feeling like they at least were in a great mental space to come back and attack this in the competition phase, which we're in now. We've had a great first 4 practices, and to put the pads on at this point, and we'll still be limited a little bit time-wise on what the league lets us do day one, but we're definitely going to get after it and figure out exactly, where we're at from a standpoint of building the toughness part of our football team, being able to be, an all-weather type of team, play in the hot weather. I'm sure we'll get some other weather throughout camp, but we're going to attack it, and our guys are ready to roll.
Earlier today, Coach Donatel talked about how you set goals for the team before every practice, every day, and that they exceeded or met every goal so far in this camp. So what is today's goal?
Yeah, to continue practicing, at a really high level execution-wise. Don't let, the element of the physical nature of being able to now, physically put hands on people. And we've been practicing pretty physical through the first 4 days, but now, the finish of can we still, can we fit up Dalvin Cook on a run, but yet still let him finish? And what that means is we're practicing like a professional type fit outfit that really knows how we need to kind of come out here, establish goals, check those boxes. And I say that sometimes the team is checking boxes that can sometimes be just another checking another box, but that's really not how we look at it. We establish a goal, you tell these guys what the expectation is, and these guys have knocked it out of the park every single time I've done that. And so now they've established a standard of that. That's what I told them the other night is, hey, the standard is here, and I didn't set that. You guys have done that by what we've asked you to do and how you do it every single time. So now we expect that as coaches. So if that does not happen, they'll hear about it.
All part of that foundation that you're building so much. Thank you so much to Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell for joining us here in the field. Have a great practice. Enjoy the competition today, right?
Yeah, it's going to be great. We're fired up. Got a great practice, ready to roll. We'll see how our young guys mix in with ththese veterans. But ultimately, great to have you guys doing this today, and great to see the stands full yesterday. Hope to see the same thing today.
All right. Thank you so much, Coach. Back to you, Pete. PA up there, actually, up on the Wolf Deck.
Yeah, we are on the Wilf Perch outside of the executive offices for Fox 9 and Vikings.com. Those of you who can see it, KFA, and listen to it, that's where we've been all day. And great job by Tatum Everett. But this indeed, these 2022 Vikings, it's a redo, but it's a redo with talent and familiar faces, including that guy, Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I think for Kirk Cousins, there's going to be a lot of changes perhaps for him. I mean, one thing that this offense didn't do before is the three-step type throwing and all that. So, he's going to have to learn some of that. For Dalvin Cook, I'm excited to see how the running game fits. They didn't have a great running game out in L.A., but Dalvin Cook is a special talent. How are they going to get him, C.J. Ham, get all these guys mixed up and go? And then, Justin Jefferson, we spoke with him earlier, Paul. He is so excited at what he can do, the route trees, the different things, the way that Kevin O'Connell likes to match these guys up. And this other guy here, Adam Thielen, you try to take one away, you're going to have the other. And I think the two of them know that if they can play off of each other, they are going to do better as a group. And then this guy here, Irv Smith Jr., he's going to have to get his pads on and be a good blocker, because in this offense, they depend on the tight end to block quite a bit, and it's also going to open him up in play actions and red zones. I'm excited for all of those guys and what Coach O'Connell is going to do with them. And if you talk to the players, they say, I think Kevin is a little surprised at how much we have talent-wise offensively, and let's hope that is indeed the case.
Sure, it's a redo, but again, it is a redo with talent, and your Vikings have unpredictability and deception on their side early in the season until teams start to get tells on tendencies. And defensively speaking, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's just the ways and means become rearranged. Danielle Hunter, by the way, when he's healthy, he dominates.
He does, and he's going to be playing a little bit of a different position. I think it's going to be easier for him mentally, harder for him physically. Eric Kendricks, you talked about the linebackers earlier, and how much of a true 3-4 and two-gapping and those things. I think he, in his ability mentally to cover cover running backs and how he defends the underneath, is second to none. I can't wait to see what Donatel does with him, and I'd like to see him blitz more. Harrison Smith, he's been around forever. From a coverage standpoint, I think that's where this defense is going to change the least, Paul. I think you're going to have a lot of the same, what they did before. Patrick Peterson, he's used to seeing the number one wide receiver week in and week out. I think that's going to continue for him. And we'll see what's going to happen on that other side. What's going to happen at that cornerback position opposite of him? You have a new safety in Louis-St. I think being around these veterans week in and week out are going to help him a ton.
And free agency also was something very important to new general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. Again, we'll hear from him later with Gabe Henderson. Likewise for Kevin O'Connell and the importance. But Zadarius Smith, Harrison Phillips, Jordan Hicks is one of the inside linebackers in the 3-4. Jordan Hicks played for those 2017 Philadelphia Eagles that won Super Bowl 52 at US Bank Stadium. And Chandon Sullivan, who also came over from the Packers, like this guy, Zadarius Smith.
What I love about Zadarius is his attitude. He wasn't a high draft pick. He worked his way. He got to where he was, and I think he's one of the best interior third down pass rushers I've seen on film. In how they're going to use him, I hope we can get a guy who can rush from the outside on third down, let him go in, let him go one-on-one. Now this guy, he was a 4-3 player over in Buffalo, and he came here. You see some of the tape and what he did against New England a year ago. That is a big man, a big, strong body, and he is going to be required to take up a offensive lineman and then some in the running game and let those linebackers run freely.
Training camp live from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, and again, it's a redo with talent, but it's also a redo with new players. Smith, Phillips, Hicks, Chandon Sullivan. He won't play as much, say, as Patrick Peterson or Harrison Smith, but he's going to play a vital role, and he knows the division incredibly well too. Now, Cam Dantzler currently is the starting corner opposite Patrick Peterson. The starting safety currently is Cam Bynum, who will be in his second year from Cal, and Jesse Davis at right guard, former Miami Dolphin. But with pads going on, Louis-St., Andrew Booth Jr., Ed Ingram, second-round offensive lineman from Louisiana State University, How excited are those guys to try to win playing time?
No, you're right, and that's really, what positions is there really a battle where you're saying that it could go either way? Right guard is absolutely one of those positions. The cornerback position, Lewis Seen, I think, is really the favorite to get that spot. Cam Bynum, I mean, it just is what it is. When you have a first-round draft pick take your, in your spot, it's a rough deal. But Bynum got himself here, and he's going to stick around. So we got to see what's going to happen. Shannon Sullivan, the nickel is so important. You almost have to have a dedicated nickel. That's going to be his job, I think, this year. So defensively, a lot of new faces. The competition, though, is going to be at that right corner position.
This is Training Camp Live from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center on KFAN, Vikings.com, and Fox 9. The GM Kwesi next. Look at the new era of Vikings football. There are 12 more practices open to the public, including a night practice 1 week from today under the lights here at TCO Stadium. Visit Vikings.com/camp to reserve your tickets now. And welcome back to Vikings Training Camp Live, presented by Twin Cities Orthopedics. Pete Bursich and Paul Allen. And the 2022 rookie class was headlined by Georgia safety Lewis Cine. And Lewis Cine was taken near the end of the first round. After that, you roll from Lewis Cine into Andrew Booth Jr., Ed Ingram, and so on, all the way down the line. With padded practices beginning today for Lewis Messers Cine and or the likes of Ingram, Booth, Caleb Evans you mentioned earlier, really all the way down to the last guy you see on that list is if you don't win a job with the regular team, the active 53 before the inactives on game day, being on the practice squad, man, and executing your toil there, that's not the worst thing in the world. You're in the NFL.
No, it isn't. And, that's what a lot of these guys, sometimes they need that time. And we're taking a look at Lewis Cine right now and his height, weight, and speed and all those things. That he's kind of the total package. At least that's what we look at him to be. Big day in pads for him. He's going to, just a different tempo, different things coming down maybe on tight ends a little bit, trying to be a little bit more physical. He has that attitude, though, Paul, that he wants to hit somebody. So you get him next to Harrison Smith. I'm really excited to see what this kid is going to do. And hopefully be just stalwart, just lock that position down, because it's been a position that's kind of been a thorn in our side for the last couple of seasons defensively, and to have him be able to come in and lock that thing down is going to be so huge for Donatel in this defense.
Ed Donatel, the new defensive coordinator, Wes Phillips, the new offensive coordinator, Kevin O'Connell, the new head coach. Kevin will be calling the offense from the sideline, Wes Phillips by his side. In L.A. with the Rams, the champions, that's the place whence Phillips and O'Connell came. Sean McVay, it all started and stopped with him, one of the best coaches in the NFL. Kevin O'Connell was his right-hand man. That seems to be the same way here with O'Connell and Wes Phillips. Wes will be on the sidelines during games, from what I understand, but it has to be different, like where Wade's kid, Bum's grandkid, Wes Phillips, will have more responsibility maybe during the game than Kevin did, because Sean had just done it markedly longer than Kevin. This is his first year calling plays, and whether it's whether it's Justin Jefferson or rookie Jalen Naylor, who's behind us right now, the Michigan State kid, is part of the punt return brigade trying to win a spot there. You mix in rookies and veterans and pads and heat and newness, and it's just fascinating.
Well, I love seeing Naylor out there returning punts. I mean, he's that kind of a wiggle, talented type of a guy. And, you mentioned trying to make this roster, and the running back room is going to be deep. The wide receiver room is, coming from a group from Thielen and Jefferson. That's the deepest room they've seen in a long time. You got to find a way to make this team, and punt return is, I think, the easiest way to make this team this season. We haven't had it again. That's been a position in flux for a very, very long time, and you can get a rookie to come in here and nail that down, then I think that's going to be great for everybody.
Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, general manager for the Vikings, coming up very shortly with Gabe Henderson from the Vikings Entertainment Network, as we take a look at some of these rookies, and they not only include the ballyhooed, those who were drafted, but they're like, there's this cat named Zach McLeod, and he's a linebacker from Wake Forest. The Vikings paid a lot of money to win a battle against an AFC team to get the rights to McLeod and have him come here. Now, like Zach McLeod, he's undrafted, but guess what? So was Johnny Randall. So was Marcus Sherrill. So was Adam Thielen. And I'm watching this McLeod, and I'm not trying to be New Rockney or anything, but he's fast, and he's mean, and he's instinctive. And, so even this time of the year for players like that, this is not Major League Baseball where you draft somebody and you wait X amount of years to get their jersey. Likewise for the National Hockey League, this is not a second-round pick in the NBA where most of them don't work out. There are so many positions to be had in 53 on the roster with the practice squad. Even those who were undrafted, they have a chip chair and a chance to change their lives.
Yeah, they absolutely do, and I think that's something that you realize once you get all 90 bodies out on the field. you don't recognize everyone, and you have no idea if that guy over there was a first-round pick or a free agent or whatever. All they see is what you do on film. So for a guy who's an undrafted rookie free agent to come in, if he shows up on film, they're not, the front office is going to know. And by the way, this is the front office's favorite time of the year, right here today, this day, when they get to see these draft picks put pads on for the first time, all these new faces and new bodies and guys that they've been researching for months and months and months. Now you finally get a chance to take a look at them. They love all of that, and today is like Christmas for your front office and personnel people.
And the man opening the gifts draft weekend, Minnesota Vikings general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. He's with Gabe Henderson from the Vikings Entertainment Network.
Appreciate you, PA. We are outside here at the TCO Performance Center in Kwesi. It's a little bit cooler than it was on Saturday, the last time we were out here, but the pads are on. Is today the first day you can start evaluating some of these rookies?
I mean, like you said, we love when the pads start talking. That's a great part of this evolution of what we're doing here. But, there's information you get before the pads come on. You can see certain movements, people putting themselves in positions for tackle area, different things from quarterbacks, different positions. But to your point, the pads is when this is the closest thing to the real thing that we do and love. And so I wouldn't say it's the first point, but it's the first most accurate point and the most accurate information we're going to get so far.
I love to hear that, man. Of course, all across the building, you see signs that says our culture, our process, our way. Where are you in that process of understanding this is where I wanted to envision?
Yeah, it's, culture is one of those things where they're words on a page, they're phrases, but it takes a while to permeate, and it really permeates in everything you do. So you can establish a culture right away, but you have to keep nurturing it, keep monitoring it, and really keep growing it. So that's been cool to watch with Kevin, and really you see how they came back in the offseason, all the players, the dedication they took to the offseason, their preparation, our coaching staff, just it's been incredible to watch him get it going, and honestly, we want it to keep going in that direction, and it just continues with what we're doing.
Man, everybody knows your story, from San Francisco to Cleveland to here, but as a general manager now, how has your eyes changed from what you view 10 years ago versus now?
It's interesting. With those first few years in San Francisco, I wasn't really at practice very much. They kind of locked me in a room with Python and in a dark room trying to figure out the math side of things. But as I got out there, I think the one mistake that people can make is if you try and see everything, you see nothing. And so I wanted to make sure that I picked different things to focus on, and that really kind of developed my eye and get better exposure. Really, even still now, I know that I don't have a coach's eye where it's trained over 30 years of seeing it field level. So I try and focus on certain things, try and get something out of every rep. But I know my best thing is going in that office, spending as much time as anybody, and really getting detailed and trying to learn as much information as I can.
I'm looking forward to let you get out here on this field. We got practice starting in PA. Ben, PA Pete, I'm going to send it back to you guys up top.
Gabe Henderson, thank you. Thank you, Kwesi. And 13 days from today, the Vikings have their first preseason game. It's at Las Vegas against maybe Derek Carr and Devontae Adams, but nevertheless the silver and black with the Las Vegas Raiders. So it's real, and it gets real today with padded practices, specifically when you get down in the trenches and involving offensive linemen where you can mesh not only the new but with the old or the veterans, where Ed Ingram, Ed Ingram, the rookie from LSU, he's played in some incredibly big college football moments in his life. But Jesse Davis, even though he wasn't considered one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL with the Miami Dolphins, he knows what loud NFL stadiums look like. Absolutely. He knows what middle linebackers do to deceive on defenses. He's a veteran. They start battling today against a Vikings defense with pads on. That's going to be a heck of a battle.
It is, and I think for Ingram, the big point for him is just you can't put a price on experience, right? So for Davis, he's been around for a long time. He's been doing these things. Like you said, he's been through the heat of battle. He knows how a game plan is installed. He knows how things change week to week. He knows how to work on things. He knows how to take care of his body. For Ingram, he's new, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. He's fresh. He's got a fresh body. He's a young man. He should be able to be able to weather all of this stuff physically, and that's his big thing. Is if he can do some things physically, that no one else in that room can do, then that's going to be the fastest way for him to get on the field.
Those of you watching at Vikings.com, you see 62. That's Chris Reed. He played collegiately at Mankato and then was with the Jacksonville Jaguars. When the Jags were here at TCOPC for a joint practice a few years ago, the Vikings were very infatuated with this young man. Subsequently, went and played with the Indianapolis Colts, but he's a veteran who knows how to play. And that's just so key. We also saw Ezra Cleveland. How about Ezra? It drafted from Boise State to be a tackle. Because of a confluence of circumstances, he has to end up playing guard. And now not only is he a guard, he's a left guard, and he got really good last year.
Yeah, he did. And you know, for these guys, too, they're all hearing a new voice, right? They have new coaches. You have a new offensive scheme, so they've got to wrap their heads around that. So that does give the younger players, I think, maybe a little bit more of an advantage, because it's harder to unlearn an old system to learn a new one than it is it being the new one that you step into. So that all those things together, you combine all those things, and again, you can't just take and look at the Rams running game last year and say this is what they're going to do this year, because of Dalvin Cook and the CJ Hams of the world and the different bodies that you have.
And Dalvin Cook, one of the best overall running backs in the NFL, ain't no doubt about that. Alexander Mattison heads into a contract year. He backs him up. Then you have second-year Cyclone, Kene Wong-Wu. And, oh, by the way, Ty Chandler from North Carolina by way of Tennessee, he's lickety-split fast. Gabe Henderson has these thoughts on the running back stable. What's on your mind, bud?
Yeah, I know you said Dalvin Cook is going to be the guy first, second, third down every play this year, but we know Dalvin has had some injury problems in the past. So who is going to be that guy? A lot of people are saying Alexander Mattison, but at the same time, you look at Alexander Mattison, you say, okay, how does he fit in this offense? And being in that contract year, how does that fit with what we want to do going forward? I think Alexander Mattison has a chip on his shoulder, knowing that he's going to get paid eventually. But right now, if you're Kevin O'Connell, hey, we got Kene Wong-Wu, we got Ty Chandler. Does Alexander Mattison fit in that scheme? Right now he does, but we'll see what that looks like once training camp is over. The pads are on now. So now we get to see what these guys look like in between the holes, in between the gaps. And Alexander Mattison, he's going to live up to expectations, but at the same time, you got to look at those other two guys, Ty Chandler and Kene Wong-Wu, right behind Dalvin Cook.
Well, with the running backs, excellent contribution, Gabe, is to go Dalvin to Madison. That's prohibitively favored. All right, now Alex is not as fast as Kene Wong-Wu or Ty Chandler or Dalvin Cook. But if you just look back at how the Rams operated things last year, and it's not like everything's going to be pilfered from the LA Rams and it's going to be exactly like this. But by the way, they did win the championship and they've been to the Super Bowl twice under that coach, so what they're doing is not too bad. They used a running back stable when they were healthy of Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson, and Sony Michel.
Yep.
And Sony Michel was kind of the Alexander Mattison in that mix, a bigger guy, kind of physical. And like Darrell Henderson, you don't see or hear much from him for a month and change. Then in the Super Bowl, they're throwing him like 9 wheel routes in the Super Bowl.
Right.
So unpredictability and deception is on the side of the Minnesota Vikings in the early stages of the season, because nobody knows what's coming with the offense or the defense.
You're right, and I think for Madison, the big thing for him is that he's a known commodity, meaning he started games, he's played, and that he's not going to just drop the football, so to speak. He's going to get in there. You know what you're going to get out of him, and I think that's the best thing for him. The challenge, though, is like guys like Ty Chandler, and Kene Wong-Wu. They have different skill sets, Paul. They're more kind of these scat hybrid, get them in space. They have some unbelievable speed type of athletes. And so, it may be that those guys fulfill a different role, and Madison's main bread and butter is, really being Dalvin Cook when Dalvin Cook can't play or when he's, needs a break, and that is fine. But like I said, you can trust Madison. He's played the game. He started games. He knows how to do protection, pass protection. He knows all that. He knows all of that stuff, and you have film on him that he can step in and not just die.
KFAN, Vikings.com, Fox 9. It's Paul Allen and Pete Bursich from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. When we return, let's slice and dice the cornerback battles. get your first look at the new era of Vikings football. 12 more practices open to the public through 2 joint practices with the San Francisco 49ers, August 17th and 18th. Visit Vikings.com/camp to reserve your tickets and come to that beautiful facility, the best in the National Football League. And I haven't been to all the facilities around the NFL, but now, talking to the coaches who have been here the last X amount of years since this place opened in 2016, through this new staff with a fair amount of coaches, who have been around the block, including like Mike Pettin, assistant head coach, former head coach of the Cleveland Browns, longtime defensive coordinator in the NFL with the likes of the Jets and the Green Bay Packers, Kevin O'Connell. He's been around. Wes Phillips, Ed Donatel. He's been all over the place. Is that facility you just saw is such a luxury for these players and for these coaches, even when it comes to having a competitive advantage. But when it comes to the fans taking in the practices, again, Vikings.com/camp, because padded practices begin today. You have those joint practices against the Niners in the middle of August. That's Kyle Shanahan. That's one of the best coaches in the NFL. And that's going to include Trey Lance from Rochester, Minnesota, who played at North Dakota State University. Vikings.com/camp if you would like to join, because it's just a wonderful, beautiful facility. And with pads on, here come the training camp battles between the corners and the wide receivers. For the Minnesota Vikings, with Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and the likes of KJ Osborne, they're set. Now the corners, that guy Patrick Peterson, he's potential HOF, he's set. Chandon Sullivan, I believe he's set as the nickel, the third corner, the inside guy, the former Packer. But now you got Cam Dantzler and Andrew Booth Jr. with the likes of Chris Boyd. He's been around. Your guy Caleb Evans with the long arms. Harrison Hand's been around. What do you think of all this stuff?
Well, I think that these names that you see here, there's not a lot of them that are going to be gone. I mean, a lot of these guys are going to make this final roster because in this day and age, you can't have too many corners. And I'm excited to see what Andrew Booth comes out and is able to do. He was a guy that really wasn't able to run an official 40 or didn't run an official 40, which may have been the reason why he slipped to that second round, because when you watch the film, he was worthy, I think, of a first or low first round type of a draft. He's that talented. He's very cagey. He's smart on the field. He knows offenses and what they're trying to do. And, so for Cameron Dantzler, hopefully the number change is going to change, I think, a few other things, and that mainly, number one, is consistency, is that he just needs to get more consistent. He has a couple of years. He has some experience under his belt, and I think that's what he's going to have to lean on most highly going into this camp.
And with Andrew Booth Jr., who you see now, Fox 9 and or Vikings.com, you hear it on the flagship KFAN. This is not surprising, but Booth, a drafted high by the Vikings. He was all ACC academic, and he played for Clemson when Clemson's Clemson. That's all you need to say. And as the camp goes, that there a few days ago, he undercuts a Jefferson route and picks off Cousins, and it looked beautiful, like he'd been in the league 10 years. Yeah. He also got a little physical with Amir Smith-Marset. They were jawing at each other a little bit, but Andrew was laying down, this is how I play. Even though we don't have pads on yet, we'll wait till next week, but hey, this is how I play. Then the next practice, he's getting talked to by a coach because of 2 bad run angles or 2 bad run fits where like the 2, 3, or 4 might have gotten around him.
Yeah, you're right, and that's what it's going to be like for this kid every single day. But one thing we saw with him in college was his ability to be in the right spot and then be able to still break on the quarterback. So it's not just breaking passes up, but it's getting the interception.
As we mentioned earlier, the Minnesota Vikings, we've had a lot of change. There is a new regime. This is a redo with talent, and there's a lot of talent on this team. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Kirk Cousins, top 10 quarterback in the NFL, an emerging KJ Osborne, with the likes of Dalvin Cook and Christian Darrisaw, highly drafted. Brian O'Neill's one of the best right tackles in the game. This offense, but specifically these receivers, the Vikings are kind of stacked.
Yeah, they are, and you have probably one of, if not the best wide receiver duo in Jefferson and Thielen. So what are you going to do after that? And Osborne, KJ Osborne, did a nice job for us last year. I think one guy is Jalen Naylor, and he comes in late round pick. He's had trouble in college staying on the field, staying healthy, but he possesses a skill set that I think is a little bit different than say JJ or Adam Thielen, in that he's that wiggle kind of a receiver. He runs really, really nice routes, at least he did in college. He's a 4.5 guy, so he's not like that lightning speed, but he can start and stop and create space against defensive backs. And I think that this offense is going to need someone to be that motion guy, to be that kind of quote-unquote gadget guy and a nailer. If he can catch punts, that's another huge, feather in his cap or arrow in the quiver, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's, I'm excited to see what that young man's going to do this preseason.
You see KJ Osborne right here in the pandemic season with no fans. They used him trying to retrieve punts, and it didn't work well. And he didn't get any offensive reps that year, but it just shows you that you can't cast a judgment specifically on a rookie until you get about 20, 25 games into this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're watching KJ Osborne on a windy day in Egan. That punt knuckleballed on him, went down to his shoelaces. He brought it in beautifully and didn't muff it. So, I mean, even just with that snippet, he's improved at that. But you've seen it, man. These guys jump out of their skin years 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. KJ did that last year.
Yeah, they do, and that's one of the things. That's one of, I think, the repercussions of a limited training camp. And by limited, I mean you don't have a ton of practices, you don't have a ton of days in pads. So these guys, it takes a little bit longer, and especially at like the tight end position where you're half offensive lineman, half wide receiver. For a guy like KJ Osborne, that switch that used to come on maybe, let's say, middle of the season rookie year, for some guys it's taken a year or two, and that's why it's so important, like you said earlier, the importance of a practice squad, the importance of being able to keep these guys in the quote-unquote system, let them develop, and then you're going to get guys that come out of nowhere at certain points and do some unbelievable things, and Osborne is one of those guys.
Tatum Everett with the Vikings Entertainment Network and Vikings.com. Miss Tatum has been unearthing so many new things with Vikings training camp because it's new, but it's a redo with talent. And this young lady has found yet a new wrinkle with 2022 Vikings training camp. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up that word new, PA, because we really haven't heard that much lately. No, I just heard you guys talking about this new staff. And when we spoke to Adam Thielen, he said, this is a coaching staff that breaks norms. And when I asked for an example, I looked actually on the defensive side of things. They introduced virtual walkthroughs this time around where they put an offensive line and a look on screen for the guys to line up against. And, most guys don't get too stoked about being in a walkthrough. It's not as exciting as today with the pads. But when you heard guys like Asezi Otomoe, or I talked to Jalen Twyman, Dalvin Tomlinson, those guys all told me how beneficial something like that is. They're able to really get in the game, see the movements, know where they need to put their hands, their feet, where to go, how to set up, and it really has helped translate into today. When I spoke to Cam Bynum, he talked about how this defense is all about energy and they're all feeding off of each other. And while virtual walkthroughs are definitely not what they're going through today, it's the foundation, it's the teaching that this staff has really hit home this season. That is how the virtual walkthroughs play into this and how it's translating, they hope, to a safer, faster learning environment here at training camp.
That's fantastic. Wow. And this old dog likes new tricks. And virtual walkthrough, I mean, there are just so many things that create advantages for your team when you do that because you got everybody together. You can monitor how well they're paying attention. There have been schedule changes here at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center where the walkthrough is now 2.5 hours later than it used to be. Practices are pretty much at the same time, but the players are here later in the day as opposed to earlier. And the walkthrough's closer to the practice, maybe for mental retention. That was a great nugget. With the Vikings schedule, we all know what the schedule is. They play Green Bay week 1. That one's here. Then you're at the Eagles Monday night. You see it right there. The bye is near the middle of the season after the Vikings go to London. They play the Chicago Bears. But this schedule, the common thread for me here is the quarterbacks you're going to be facing. Now, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, talented players like that. Mm-hmm. They undoubtedly will improve, But, I mean, you have a lot of inexperienced quarterbacks on that schedule. That could help Minnesota.
Yeah, you do. And, everyone, it's like everyone assumes that the NFC East is going to be what they were last year, and that's a struggling division. So you see the NFC East on the schedule, and, people get excited, like the New York Jets, for example. I mean, there's another team that – you talk about adding talent. That's a team, in the New England Patriots, they're always in the mix. But you start out with your, number one rival in Green Bay, and you don't play him again until, as you can see here, very, very late in the season. So the Giants, wild card, the Colts is going to be an interesting game because that's always a team that's not known very well here. We didn't do very well against them in Green Bay, in Indianapolis on the COVID year.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a very interesting game.
Kirk Cousins to close. You see him on Vikings.com and/or Fox 9. You hear about it on KFAN. It's a team game. But for many teams, if not all of them, it starts and stops with the quarterback. Kirk's thrown for a lot of yards. His touchdown to interception ratio is terrific. His completion percentage is fantastic. Kirk with KOC, Kevin O'Connell. What do you like about that pairing into the year?
What I like about it is that Kevin O'Connell has a gravitas to say, "Hey, Kirk, this is how we're going to do it. Right? This is how it's going to be done." For Cousins, what's going to be interesting is he's so good at the play action type passing game. How much of that are they going to integrate it? Because you didn't see that out of the Rams last year. And that intermediate that, you look at the Rams offense, it was shotgun a majority of the time. Cousins is an under center type of a quarterback. That quick rhythm passing game, that is what this offense lacked last year. That short intermediate 3-step quick timing type of throws. Cousins that's going to be new for Kirk, and so we'll see how he adapts to that and how the receivers adapt to it. But I do think they're going to give him more ability to read defenses and be able to adjust and attack and make some changes at the line of scrimmage.
Detroit Lakes go crazy. There's Adam Thielen. 24 touchdowns the last 2 years. I mean, he's going to be 32 in 3 weeks. Main man still brings it every play, and his competitiveness is biting.
It is, and he's one of the best red zone route runners and red zone receivers in the league. I mean, he's so good once you get inside the 20, and I expect that to continue. If there's a part of his game that is continuing to grow and is going to be as good as it ever was, it's going to be that red zone area. So Irv Smith Jr., those are the guys that I expect to see catch a lot of passes inside that red zone.
Fox 9 and Vikings.com. Thank you very much. For Pete Bursich, I'm Paul Allen from Minnesota Vikings training camp at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, KFA, and stick with us.
All right, thanks very much, Paul. That was Pete Bursich as well. I'm Jim Rich along with Don Mitchell. We'll take you to the top of the hour as the Vikings continue their first padded practice of the year. Don, they're only going with 11. I think that's kind of unique, but it kind of fits the trend of this team of keeping players healthy.
And health is the main thing, too, right? Even now, they said that we're not going to go full on just because we have pads. Again, they said some of the younger players might be anxious. We want to, just keep it, but we want to ramp it up a little bit because it is a competition. But when you talk about specific guys, you have to talk about players like Danielle Hunter. He and Zadarius Smith, outside linebackers now on the edge. We want to see what those two can do, right? But the opponents obviously are wondering what they can do too. So let's keep Danielle Hunter healthy. He seems to be happy, but they're taking their time with him as well.
Yeah, and Chuck Foreman said last night when he was on Sports Now, he talked about the fact that by standing Hunter up on first and second downs should take some of the wear and tear off of him, and also he'll be going against presumably smaller people. He'll be dealing with tight ends and players like that versus the big offensive linemen. So hopefully that'll allow him to keep more tread on the tire. And Smith, coming off the back injury, he's another one where the Vikings want to be very careful, because if these two go down, it's obviously going to be a very difficult season for this team defensively up front.
And I think just that knowledge, just talking to Daniil Limited, he said, I can play looser. I think they're a little more relieved too. So, it's an attitude that also goes into camp. And then when you're talking about trying to keep someone healthy, obviously Dalvin Cook, right? Let's keep the tread on the tires, like you say, for the whole season, because they're eyeing getting to the postseason. It's not if we make it. It's like, look, we want to keep the guys healthy so we can get to the postseason and hopefully to a Super Bowl, but let's just keep Dalvin running.
Right, and with this offense, O'Connell comes in obviously with a offense that throws the ball, so the workload may not be there for Cook night in and night out. And if he is, he could be involved more in the passing game. I mean, you reported it earlier in OTAs, they were putting him out as a wide receiver, Dalvin Cook. So that also takes the pressure off, the pounding off. So that could be another way they're thinking to try to keep these guys from taking those big hits.
And also, then when it comes to tight ends, too, we're not exactly sure how they're going to use them in this new regime. Irv Smith is looking great. He says he's 100%, but they've been taking time with him, too, during this training camp. Let's just, because he says he's great and he's back, let's not push it too hard, because we know what happened to him the very last game of the preseason. They don't want that to happen again.
Right, and again, without Smith, all of a sudden they have a real hole at the tight end position. So Smith is even more important this year because the guys that were here last year to back him up have moved on. So there's not a lot of depth at the tight end position if you pull Irv Smith out of the equation.
And this has kind of been the mantra for this new regime. Kevin O'Connell has said it. Listen, I know everyone wants to see these guys hit, and I know it's training camp, but it's a different kind of athlete now. You know, they're training all year round,
correct,
and we just have to take a different mentality with it. So I think that the whole thing to keep everyone healthy is important.
All right, let's take a look at the preseason schedule. Of course, all the Viking games are here on Fox 9, your home for Vikings football. And believe it or not, the Vikings' first preseason game is just 13 days away. They'll start out on the road in Vegas, and this will be interesting. The first of 3 preseason games for the Vikings this year.
You know, and I think it takes the pressure off the team to open up the preseason under a new realm, away on the road, and also you get that time to bond that they always say so much. And then, of course, the home game, right? San Francisco at home, Saturday the 20th. I think that place, Jim, is going to erupt. Everyone is just kind of bottled up waiting to see this team. And in the preseason, yes, it's not, the regular season, but I still think it's going to be huge. And then you follow it up with, again, on the road, Denver the 27th.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, and then especially that San Francisco, there'll be co-practices here with the 49ers leading up to that game, so that should be a very interesting game because they've spent a couple days kind of getting to know each other, and then they pretend for real in that preseason game. So all in all, it's been a pretty good camp, and this was a really good insight today for fans.
Yeah, and I think fans are enjoying it. I think the players are too, so all in all, they're taking their time.
All right, more Vikings coverage comes your way on Fox 9 News at 5. For now, I'm Jim Rich speaking for Don Mitchell. We'll see you at 5.